welcome to episode 13 of Toke TV. We now have a baker's dozen of these shows out, 13 episodes. I'm Steve Elliott, editor of TokeSignals.com, and I'll be bringing you the news. First of all, let's take a look at our Bud Pick of the Week. If you're following along on Toke Signals Radio, you can look at the show notes and look at that Bud Pick. What we have this week is some nice blue cheese indica. I found this strain for $10 a gram in Port Orchard, Washington at a dispensary called New Image Health and Wellness. As an indica, this is a good nighttime strain. It's a good pain relief strain. It's a good anxiety relief strain. If you smoke very much of it, though, it is going to make you sleepy, and that's why I say it's a good nighttime strain. If you have trouble sleeping, smoking some of this near bedtime is going to help. $10 a gram, New Image Health and Wellness. We have good medicine of the week this week from Robin's Oven Mitt Medibles. Robin is a Southern style cook, and she prepares medibles in a way that her grandmother taught her. She actually adapted recipes from her grandmother, who inspired her to get into the medibles business. Her grandmother has Alzheimer's, and Robin noticed the bad side effects of many of the Alzheimer's medications upon her grandmother. Swollen lips, aggressive behavior, and an upset stomach were just a few of those, according to Robin McGee of Robin's Oven Mitt. So she decided to get her off of those pharmaceuticals and let her have a pharmaceutical-free quality of life with medical cannabis. She adapted a few of her favorite recipes from her grandma, and those include sweet potato pie and my personal favorite, pecan pie. To a Southern guy, it's hard to go wrong with medicated pecan pie. A spoonful of sugar definitely makes the medicine go down. The lab tests on these treats show that they have about 25 milligrams of THC, about 15 milligrams of that being activated carboxylated THC. So if you have an extremely high tolerance, you may want to eat 2 of the pies. Otherwise, if you have an average tolerance, 1 of them is going to set you just about right. You can check out Robin's stuff on Facebook if you go to facebook.com/ovenmitt. Now let's get into the news, shall we? First of all, this week, we have a new scientific study that shows that the other cannabinoids, not just THC, are effective against cancer. This study looked at 6 cannabinoids, and all 6 of them demonstrated anti-cancer properties as effective as those seen in THC. Now, the anti-cancer properties of THC, which is the main psychoactive ingredient in marijuana, are becoming well known. Research on the other cannabinoids, however, hasn't progressed as far. But this new research has shown that the non-psychoactive components of cannabis, these other cannabinoids, also act as effective anti-cancer agents. The study looked at 2 forms of cannabidiol, CBD, 2 kinds of cannabigerol, CBG, and 2 forms of cannabigervarin, CBGV. And it was done by a team at St. George's, University of London, according to Science Daily. It was published in the October issue of the scientific journal Anti-Cancer Research under the title Enhancing the Activity of Cannabidiol and Other Cannabinoids in Vitro Through Modifications to Drug Combinations and Treatment Schedules. These laboratory investigations, using a number of cannabinoids alone and in combination with each other, were undertaken to measure their anti-cancer actions in relation to leukemia. CBD, CBG, and CBGV are the most common cannabinoids found in the cannabis plant other than THC, according to these scientists. Now, all 6 cannabinoids studied by the team, which was led by Dr. Wide Liu, each demonstrated anti-cancer properties as effective as those seen in THC. Now, crucially, they had an increased synergistic effect when combined with each other. And that's probably at least part of the explanation why Marinol, dronabinol, and other pharmaceutical preparations of pure THC, for example, just don't work as well for most patients as herbal cannabis. According to Dr. Liu, this study is a critical step in unpicking the mysteries of cannabis as a source of medicine. The cannabinoids examined have minimal, if any, hallucinogenic side effects, he said, and their properties as anti-cancer agents are promising. These agents are able to interfere with the development of cancerous cells, stopping them in their tracks and preventing them from growing, Dr. Liu said. In some cases, by using specific dosage patterns, they can destroy cancer cells on their own. Used in combination with existing treatment, we could discover some highly effective strategies for tackling cancer, Dr. Liu said. Significantly, these compounds are inexpensive to produce, and making better use of their unique properties could result in much more cost-effective anti-cancer drugs in the future. This research team at St. George's is conducting a portfolio of studies into the medicinal properties of cannabis, and this latest research is part of that. The next step will be to look at these cannabinoids in combination with existing anti-cancer treatments and studying treatment schedules to identify ways to maximize their effectiveness. Also on Toke Signals this week, a cure for marijuana addiction equals media hype. We heard a lot in the mainstream press this week about supposedly a cure for marijuana abuse, for marijuana addiction. But not only is marijuana addiction a manufactured problem, this week's brouhaha about a cure is nonsense, according to the British National Health Service. You probably saw the clueless headlines this week, trumpeting a cure for marijuana addiction, quote unquote. Like me, you probably wondered, marijuana addiction? Have they somehow discovered a whole new lower class of losers? Well, first of all, let's dispense with the most glaringly obvious problem in this story. There definitely are not hordes of desperate marijuana addicts roaming the streets looking for a cure for their affliction. And in fact, almost all of those unfortunate enough to be in drug rehab for quote-unquote marijuana abuse aren't there by choice. They're not even there because they remotely need to be. They are there because they were forced there by a judge's court order, with door number 2 being the jailhouse entrance. So naturally, the infamous National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, which by its own rules will only study the negative effects of cannabis use, not any medical benefits, decides that it's ever so urgent to spend millions of taxpayer dollars on a cure for marijuana abuse. The absurdity would be amusing if it weren't so painfully stupid. All too eager to go along with the maddening charade, veritably leading a pea-brained little feel-good parade about the new discovery, tabloid rags like the UK's Daily Mail in all its hyperventilating glory asked, have scientists found a cure for marijuana addiction? New treatment blocks the kick that users get from the drug. A cure for marijuana abuse could be on the horizon thanks to a new finding, the lead sentence by hack Emma Ennis informs us. The story goes on to detail a study involving monkeys and rats and how something called canurenic acid, found in bananas and turkey, and also naturally found in the human brain, can blunt, the rewarding effects of THC, the principal psychoactive cannabinoid in marijuana. Now, canurenic acid apparently works by blocking the receptors that increase the rush of pleasant feelings and euphoria brought on by the brain chemical dopamine. Any drug of abuse has to do with dopamine, said study researcher Robert Schwartz, professor of psychiatry at the University of Maryland in College Park. We found out a few years ago that canurenic acid controls dopamine. All we had to do was put those things together. Now, almost all the stories covering this marijuana addiction cure pointed out that more people seek treatment for marijuana addiction than for heroin or cocaine, but almost none of them contextualized that by pointing out that almost every single one of those quote-unquote marijuana addicts is defined as being in need of treatment by force and under threat of jail. Yeah, you would think that was a rather important point, but even the hallowed Smithsonian totally missed it, gravely reporting as if it were an established fact that plenty of marijuana users are seeking ways to aid in kicking the habit. Make no mistake about it, pot is actually one of the easiest substances to quit. There may be a slight drop-off in appetite and some mild sleep disturbances and irritability for a couple of days. Then you're done. If you've ever quit Coca-Cola or coffee, weed is easy peasy. Anyway, the THC found in cannabis activates dopamine neurons in a brain region called the ventral tegmental area, the VTA. This causes the cells to release the feel-good chemical from nerves in the nucleus accumbens. Previous attempts to find a cure for marijuana addiction, remember this is the infamous, benighted, ideologically driven NIDA we're talking about, not a legitimate research center, showed that blocking receptors in the VTA and the nucleus accumbens prevented the euphoric surge in dopamine, but those treatments caused troublesome side effects. The researchers speculated that perhaps kynurenic acid produced by the breakdown of tryptophan, a chemical found in bananas and turkey, may have fewer side effects because it naturally regulates dopamine levels in the brain. Testing this hypothesis, Schwartz's colleagues administered the drug to rats and squirrel monkeys that boosted their kynurenic acid levels, while the animals were self-dosing with THC or a similar synthetic cannabinoid by pushing a lever. What they learned was that the rats and the monkeys became less likely to self-administer the THC when they had been given the dopamine-repressing drug, the researcher reported online on October 13th in the journal Nature Neuroscience. In fact, the animals chose to consume about 80% less THC while under the influence of kynurenic acid. But after the drug wore off, they went right back to previous THC consumption levels. We found that you can reduce dopamine levels and the animals behave differently, Schwartz told Fox News. The really interesting finding is that when we looked at behavior, simply increasing kynurenic acid levels totally blocked the abuse potential and the chance of relapse, Schwartz said. It's a totally new approach to affecting THC function. Now, does this mean that the authorities have found a way to block the action of marijuana in all of us? Beyond that, since dopamine is associated with any experience of pleasure, have these fucked up killjoys found a way to eliminate pleasure-seeking behavior from errant hedonists? Don't bet on it. First of all, humans aren't as simple as rats and monkeys. But beyond that, based on the evidence in the study, which involved animals, the answer to the male's question is not yet when it comes to finding a cure for marijuana addiction. And that's according to the National Health Service's website from the British government. While treatment with the drug called RO61-8048, that's the compound used by the researchers to administer kynurenic acid to the rodents. While treatment with that blocked the effects of THC on the brain's reward system, resulting in a drop-off in marijuana use, further studies are required to ensure that a similar compound is safe and effective in humans, the National Health Service warns us. You see, the problem is, dicking around cluelessly with dopamine levels can be a lot more dangerous than little old marijuana ever was. Among other regrettable effects, low dopamine can lead to clinical depression, weight gain, and loss of motor control. Even Schwartz himself cautions that too much dopamine is bad for us, but too little dopamine is bad for us too. You want homeostasis, so we have to be careful not to decrease dopamine levels too much. I would add that it would be especially unfortunate to dangerously decrease dopamine levels for a reason as dumb as supposed marijuana addiction. After all, wouldn't you rather be high than depressed? The NHS called the Daily Mail's choice of a headline unhelpful and misleading, adding that a study involving monkeys and rats does not, however promising the results, equate to a cure in humans. Nonetheless, the researchers concluded that the present results indicate that pharmacological modulation of brain KYNA levels by KMO inhibitors could provide an effective approach for the treatment of marijuana dependence. Now all they need are people who are unhappy with their marijuana use and clinical trials to find out if the stuff is worth anything for those 9 out of every 100 marijuana users whom supposedly, according to the NIDA, grow dependent on weed. From Ohio this week, we have a story from Hemp News. Advocates in Ohio are pushing for a medical marijuana law. One leader of the medical marijuana reform movement in Ohio says that the numerous benefits of cannabis use mean that it should be legalized for both medical and industrial reasons. John Pardee, who's president of the Ohio Rights Group, said that in addition to the medical benefits of marijuana, hemp, a non-psychoactive variety of cannabis, can be used for food, fuel, and fiber. Pardee did some research after his son was involved in a near-fatal auto crash in 2008. And what he learned was that conventional medicine offers very few options for pain management other than dangerous, addictive opiates. But he found that medical marijuana is a non-toxic alternative to these drugs. I found that cannabis has not killed anyone, he said to a crowd at Oberlin College on Thursday. The Ohio Rights Group is sponsoring the Ohio Cannabis Rights Amendment, which would allow for the medical use of marijuana and the industrial use of hemp. The group has already gathered more than 30,000 signatures from registered Ohio voters, but it needs 385,000 signatures to get the amendment in front of the voters on the 2014 ballot. That's where Cheryl Schumann, the Martha Stewart of marijuana, comes in. She has the biggest megaphone in America today, Pardee said. She's reached literally millions of people. I couldn't think of a more appropriate person. Schumann is a legal medical marijuana patient who lives in California. Since she's an Ohio native, she joined the campaign to legalize medical marijuana in her home state. For me, it's a very personal thing, Schumann said. I'm a legal medical cannabis user. I'm a cancer survivor, and I use it so I can stay cancer-free. It is a medicine, Schumann said. It should be dispensed in our hospitals. It should be dispensed in our nursing homes. I will not stop being an activist, Schumann said. I will not stop being in the media until I see medical marijuana legalization in Ohio and the rest of the country. Speaking of the rest of the country, there's also progress down in Florida, where a medical marijuana backer has put his money where his mouth is to the tune of $400,000. Last summer, Orlando trial lawyer John Morgan said he was prepared to spend a lot of money on a ballot initiative to legalize medical marijuana in Florida. And so far, he really is putting his money where his mouth is. The latest campaign finance records show that Morgan and his law firm have pitched in $400,000 to the People United for Medical Marijuana, PUFM campaign, reports Aaron Deslate of the Orlando Sentinel. That's nearly two-thirds of the $644,535 the group had raised through September, with $250,000 of that coming just in the past 3 months. The other major donor to the campaign has been Democratic fundraiser and philanthropist Barbara Stiefel of Coral Gables, Florida, who contributed $100,000. PUFM has collected enough signatures, 105,910, to trigger Florida Supreme Court review and an economic analysis of the measure's financial impact on the state. That's currently underway. To qualify for the November 2014 general election ballot, 683,149 valid signatures will be required. Longtime Democratic fundraiser Morgan, who backs former Governor Charlie Crist in the Florida gubernatorial race, makes speeches around the state in support of the medical marijuana measure. He told a Tallahassee crowd in August how both his father and his brother had suffered from cancer and injuries and turned to cannabis to find relief from their pain. This service is going to give thousands of people who are sick, hurting, and injured peace at the end of their lives, he told a full auditorium. I'm probably going to spend a lot of money, but if it passes, a lot of people are going to be better off. The measure, even if it gets on the ballot, faces a steep uphill climb. Under Florida law, constitutional amendments like this one must garner at least 60% of the popular vote in order to pass, rather than a simple majority. Progress as well in California. California looks to be poised to legalize the recreational use of marijuana. It seems that the major question at this point is, will it happen in 2014 or 2016? The latest poll indicates that nearly two-thirds, 65% of Californians support the legalization, regulation, and taxation of recreational marijuana, according to a new Tolchin research poll. Now, this poll was taken during the past 2 weeks with 1,200 likely 2016 voters, and it showed a solid majority backed proposals to legalize adult recreational cannabis. The poll found 32% oppose pot legalization and 3% are undecided. The results were released during a Thursday news conference by California Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, and American Civil Liberties Union representatives. Newsom and the ACLU announced the launch of a 2-year research project on proposals to legalize recreational cannabis. Newsom will head this panel of 16 experts, including academics, doctors, and policy wonks, who will study the political and legal issues involved in legalization. This is about real people, Newsom said. Communities are devastated because of this abject thing called the drug war. Forget the politics. This is the right thing to do. But we need to answer the tough questions before we put it on the ballot, Newsom said. I want the research in order to be more convincing to others. Two groups, though, are unwilling to wait until 2016, and they filed proposals to put recreational cannabis initiatives on the midterm 2014 ballot in California. Both of these 2014 proposals, the California Cannabis Hemp Initiative, CCHI, and the Marijuana Control, Legalization, and Revenue Act, would regulate and tax marijuana similarly to alcohol. CCHI's organizers have until April, 150 days total, to collect 504,000 signatures, while backers of the Marijuana Control, Legalization, and Revenue Act are still waiting for approval from the Attorney General to start collecting signatures. Meanwhile, other groups, including Lieutenant Governor Newsom's panel, have set their sights on 2016. California voters already narrowly rejected marijuana legalization back in the 2010 midterm election with Proposition 19. About 53% voted no that time. Voter turnout tends to be much higher in presidential election years, according to Mason DeVert, Communications Director with the Marijuana Policy Project. We believe a 2016 initiative will best demonstrate just how much support there is for ending marijuana prohibition in California, DeVert said. The support for marijuana legalization in California is there, according to Amanda Ryman, policy manager for the Drug Policy Alliance. It just may not be there strongly enough or from the right populations to claim victory in 2014, Ryman said. This is not a matter of 2014 or bust, or 2016 or bust, Ryman said. Legalization of marijuana in California is going to happen. And next to a state where legalization of a sort has already happened, Washington State, here where I live, where the Liquor Control Board this week adopted rules for recreational marijuana legalization under I-502. The Washington State Liquor Control Board this week filed the CR 103 form for Initiative 502, and that's the legalization measure approved by state voters last November. Filing the CR 103 is the formal procedure for adoption of the proposed rules to implement I-502, and it's the final step in the rulemaking process. The rules become effective 30 days after adoption, and that looks to be November 18th. Over these last several months, we have put together a comprehensive system of rules which will serve as the foundation for this new industry, according to Board Chair Sharon Foster. This has been a very open process of rulemaking with public involvement each step of the way, she said. The board claims the adopted rules achieve its stated goal of implementing a tightly regulated and controlled recreational marijuana market. The rules also align, according to the board anyway, with the Federal Department of Justice's stated areas of concern by addressing out-of-state diversion of marijuana, traceability of cannabis from start to sale, youth access, and other public and consumer safety concerns. Agency staff are doing emergency rulemaking later this month to modify the way the 1,000-foot distance between marijuana locations and the listed exclusion zones, like schools and parks, is measured to align with the federal guidelines. The method used will change from the most common path of travel to the shortest straight line from property line to property line, that is, as the crow flies. This, of course, makes the 1,000-foot rule much more restrictive and reduces even farther the sites available for retail marijuana stores in Washington. The liquor agency will open a 30-day licensing window for all three marijuana license types, producer, processor, and retailer, on November 18th. And the WSLCB's marijuana licensing unit is holding a series of 7 educational seminars across the state to help potential applicants navigate the labyrinthine licensing process. For more information on the implementation of I-502, including summaries of the law and the rules, answers to frequently asked questions like, no, you can't grow at home, only commercial grow licenses are available, or to sign up for an educational seminar, you can visit the WSLCB website, and you can consult the Toke TV 13 story on Toke Signals or the program notes on Toke Radio for that information. From down in Mexico this week, we had some interesting news where the Dalai Lama told supporters there in Mexico City that he supports medical marijuana. The Tibetan Buddhist spiritual leader made the comments in the middle of a cannabis legalization debate. Mexico City, you see, is looking at legalizing marijuana. The event in question was hosted by former Mexican President Vicente Fox, who supports legalization because that would cut off a revenue stream which currently supports the country's illegal drug cartels. The Dalai Lama said that although he is generally opposed to recreational cannabis use, the exception for smoking marijuana would be if it has pharmaceutical uses. The spiritual leader didn't get an official welcome from the Mexican government during his 5-day visit, by the way. They didn't want to make communist China mad at them, and Red China has been known to punish countries, including Mexico, who gave the Tibetan leader an official greeting. Now, before we go this week, there are a couple of stories you don't want to miss. The first one is by Ron Marksick, who, of course, is an ex-cop. He's an ex-health teacher and he's an ex-registered nurse. He retired from all these professions and now he's our marijuana expert at Toke Signals. And he has written an excellent piece this week called Marijuana Spring Will Save the Future of the Earth. Ron's column at Toke Signals is called Worth Repeating, and he's well worth checking out. It is Ron's contention that last year's election will go down in history as the beginning of the end of marijuana prohibition. He thinks of it as the crossing of the Rubicon moment for marijuana reform. We're bringing this 75-year war to a standstill. And to read more about what Ron thinks about that, check out the story Worth Repeating, Marijuana Will Save the Future of Earth, on tokesignals.com. The other thing you don't want to miss this week is a video that's up on YouTube. It was uploaded by Julia over at petermcwilliams.org, who does an enormous amount to keep the memory of activist Peter McWilliams alive. I got to talk with Julia at Hempstalk 2013 Festival in Portland, Oregon, and I got to read a brief excerpt from the Peter McWilliams book, Ain't Nobody's Business If You Do. This video is of me reading that brief excerpt at Hempstalk 2013, and you can find that on YouTube. The link will be in the Toke Signals 13 story on the website, and you can follow from there and watch this video. It's only about 5 minutes long. I hope you have a great week. I hope you'll check in with us again for the news next week on Toke Signals 14. Remember, knowledge is power. Stay informed. It is important to know exactly what is going on. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope you choose to stay lifted. See you next week.